It's my pleasure to introduce George Mathew, the Managing Director at Insight Partners. George and his team led our Series B round. So, George, welcome.
Rohit, thank you so much. Thank you again for this opportunity that we have a chance to work with you and the rest of the Acceldata team. We could not be more proud of being able to find just a stunning company that started, of course, its journey in India and have become quite global in terms of being able to scale out the opportunity for data observability.
We spoke on a Friday morning in May, and then Saturday morning, I see that you were here with your whole team in attendance. What made you move so quickly with the investment decision with Acceldata?
Yeah, so when I started to understand what was evolving in the broader data space, it became very clear to me, Rohit, that there was this real natural opportunity for an enterprise offering focused on data observability. And as we started to look at what was happening with a number of more recently funded companies that were in and around this space, it just became very clear that they were singularly focused on one or two specific elements of what an overall solution for data observability would be like. However, there was no complete solution in the market.
Multidimensional data observability has to be responsible for monitoring all of these various kinds of experiences that data users are getting today. And also it has to track the journey of data all the way from the point of ingestion or the point of origin to all the way to the point of consumption. How does that kind of fit into the overall thesis of your firm?
When we think about the next generation of data, where are these bigger opportunities as investors for this next decade? Well, no surprise, the emergence of the modern data stack is quite real. The ability to deliver a better, more cohesive ML ops pipeline, machine learning operations pipeline is quite significant. All of that hangs off of reliability of data, right? And if you don't have an understanding of your data pipelines and the quality of the data that's going through that, the downstream needs of being able to build a next generation modern data stack, or the ability to have a stronger, more effective ML ops capability in terms of how you're getting models to production at scale, all fall apart eventually without getting your data right. And that's why we were fundamentally excited with the opportunity to work with you and the Acceldata team, because this was a predicate to many of the things that were happening this next decade of data.
If you were advising CEOs and execs of the current generation, and if they were looking to invest in data observability, what traits would you necessarily ask them to look out for? And what would be the kind of areas of investments that you would encourage them to consider?
The shift is that the data is being extracted and loaded into these persistence environments at scale, and the transformation is effectively occurring in the data warehouse or in the cloud native data lake. That is a fundamental change that I don't think we're realizing what the possibilities are. But if you really play it forward for the next decade, what we're realizing is that the cloud native data warehouse or the cloud native data lake, or some combination of the two, are now becoming the new systems of record. And as those become systems of record, then all of the tools that support, all the platforms that support this new ability for the lake slash warehouse to become the system of record have to be built for that moment in time where those products are becoming strong in terms of being that underpinning for this new persistence layer. And what that means in the data observability space is that we have to be part of that ecosystem.
The adoption of many of the technologies that are coming through in the open source, the open code, the community world is going to be led by data engineers. And one of the biggest problems that they face today is lack of productivity or loss of productivity. Multidimensional data observability can help these data engineers reclaim and recover part of their time so that they can actually go and work on interesting business problems, as opposed to just solving problems on a day-to-day basis, which are operational in nature and are just being generated because of the freshness or the immaturity of the modern data stack.
Well, let's talk about those engineers for a moment, and specifically the data engineers that we're focused on in the Acceldata. Well, in my view, they also want to go home at night too, at the end of their workday, right? And the reality of their jobs is that things break things go down. Things are challenging with the data pipelines that are here today and the ones that are being built as we speak. And as I indicated, there's more of them coming, right? It's not like there's less data pipelines that are now involved. If you don't have a product that really helps them get through their workday in a more effective manner, it actually causes all kinds of like extra work on their behalf, but also just to your point, Rohit, like a huge inefficiency in terms of how this digital transformation occurs in most organizations where those data engineers are working.
So I often get up in the morning and think, are we underestimating the market again? It's been 3 years since I left Cloudera and Hortonworks. And at that time, there was this combined entity that got created, Cloudera plus Hortonworks. And just look at what has happened in the market in between the 36 months that have passed us. There's the Databricks ecosystem, there's the Snowflake ecosystems, and new databases and new technologies are just close on their heels trying to build ecosystems of their own.
Even before SAP, I was at Salesforce.com and I was employee 250-ish at Salesforce.com. And back then, Mark Benioff and Parker Harris used to say, that ultimately we totally overestimate the things that we can do in a year, but we completely underestimate the things that get done in a decade. I think we're seeing that right now, right? Because we can almost sort of turn our eye towards this next year, be like, oh my goodness, how many things do we have on our plate, right? Particularly as operators and investors who think about this next generation of data. But imagine what this future is going to look like a decade from now, and the companies that are, some of them are already here, right? The Snowflakes and Databricks of the world. But imagine the entire platform and ecosystem that surrounds some of the companies that are already here when it comes to the next generation of data. I think that's something that we should all be not only excited for, but just be very driven in terms of driving what that next decade looks like and be building brick by brick every year, which is one of the reasons I've been very much delighted with working with you and the rest of the team at Acceldata, because you do have that focus of what is the immediacy of the here and now for what's needed in the market, but the vision of what this next decade is going to look like as well.
One last question, George. Do you think that Indian SaaS companies are ready for prime time on the global stage?
More and more companies are going to emerge with more and more founder CEOs like yourself that are going to take their previous experiences of working for global software companies and now applying it to starting their journey perhaps in India, but using the conduit of what I now regard as the US-India corridor to be able to build out enormously important global companies.
Hey George, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next board meeting.